Hey, long time we haven't caught up since our grad days. Let me share something I've been diving into lately. It's all about classifying data for protection and governance within Microsoft Azure. You know how crucial data is in today's business landscape. With a ton of data breaches happening not too long ago, companies are ramping up their data security game. And here's where data classification becomes your best friend. By categorizing data based on its sensitivity, organizations like yours can manage risk better and comply more effectively with regulations. Plus, it's not just about security. Good governance practices can streamline access control and usage monitoring. Microsoft Azure offers some cool tools, like Azure Information Protection, Microsoft Information Protection, and Azure Purview, designed to make these tasks a breeze. The technical setup isn't too complex. There's an architecture that uses these tools collaboratively for classification and applies encryption and labeling where necessary. Okay, let's dive deeper. Step 1 within Azure involves setting up AIP. Azure Information Protection can label and revoke permissions to encrypt documents and emails based on sensitivity levels. This way, when someone tries to access or share data, they're informed if extra precautions or permissions are required. Then, MIP comes into play, which, if you remember our times studying data models, would involve you understanding the various classifications like public, internal, confidential, and restricted, each needing different handling processes and permissions. It's a way to ensure that sensitive data isn't just secured, but also has strict access controls and audit trails for compliance purposes. And lastly, Azure Purview helps search and inventory data, which makes it easy to keep track of where it's stored, who has access, and what controls are set. This can be a nightmare for data governance teams everywhere. Now, on to configuring the workflow. You start by defining policies within the Microsoft Endpoint Manager, which ensures these classifications are consistently applied across devices. It's all about maintaining data integrity and confidentiality no matter where your data lives. Azure's Compliance Center and the Azure Information Protection Console are also your best bets for ongoing policy enforcement. But hey, it's not all rainbows. When things go wrong, you have to be ready for that too. Advanced troubleshooting techniques in Azure often involve checking policy enforcement points and data processing flow points for any misconfigurations or access issues. Sometimes, you just need to tweak permissions and reapply labels to get everything in sync. Azure's support and the wealth of knowledge found through community forums can guide you when the road gets bumpy. Lastly, let's chat strategies for enterprise settings. As organizations expand their data footprints, they should consider data lineage and data residency in the classification plan. This means keeping track of where data came from and where it goes, which is especially important with data crossing borders or being handled by third-party services. And you, being an early adopter, might get ahead by exploring the integration of other AI-based tools within Azure or the managed services to automate some of these classification tasks, making it smoother and cutting down on administrative burdens. Alright, I should have told you at the start, but if you are on the lookout for tools and best practices for data classification in Microsoft Azure, I urge you to visit neeraj.qzz.io and subscribe to TechLab. They've got all the insights and tools we need. Keep in touch, and let's catch up more often amidst this data deluge, alright? vertical bar end underscore of underscore tutorial vertical bar to create an exhaustive and nuanced tutorial on data classification for protection and governance as practiced in Microsoft Azure. It's essential to start by framing the context and delve deep into the strategy, tools, and scenarios that would be encountered by an IT professional. Given that voiceover must mirror a casual yet informative conversation, here is a comprehensive guide. Hello again, friend. Remember when we used to rant about cybersecurity over coffee? Things got serious, and now, it's at the heart of every organization's agenda, especially when it comes to managing data in the cloud. Azure's role in ensuring data protection and governance isn't just supportive, it's integral, and they've got features that make it easier for companies to classify data like nobody's business. Data classification is like the backbone of any protection and governance framework. It's how you know if a document is a spreadsheet with sales data, a confidential contract, or a benign email draft. By categorizing data based on its sensitivity, organizations can apply the necessary security protocols, which could range from none for public content to robust encryption and access controls for sensitive information. Azure offers a suite of tools, as we discussed, to do just that. The Azure Information Protection Tool helps by applying labels and controls such as encryption to content. Now, it's practical because Microsoft has built-in understanding of various file types and sensitivity levels based on context and content. This labeling aspect becomes a foundational step since it guides access control decisions and how each piece of information is handled down the line. Speaking of access control, let's get into MIP. Imagine a world where roles and permissions directly influence the level of access an employee gets. Pretty handy for sensitive files, eh? MIP lets you set up that world. When combined with policies, you are effectively dictating who can do what with your data. It's like having a secret handshake. No one uninvited gets past without the secret. Let's not overlook policy enforcement, which is where the rubber meets the road in a well-configured Microsoft ecosystem. Policies are more than documents, they are actionable items that drive consistent application of your labels and classification across your network devices and cloud services. This creates a secure environment where sensitive data doesn't just reside, but also aligns with your compliance goals regarding data handling, transfer, and retention. But hey, no talk about best practices is complete without troubleshooting. Even with the best of tools, things go wrong, users slip up, configurations change, systems update. Too often, it's a misconfigured policy or an overlooked permission that's the culprit in an access dispute. Dive into Azure monitoring and diagnostics tools. Check logs, look for permissions mismatches, and run audits. It's detective work, and that's where your IT hustle comes into play. Enterprises, listen up. Here's a strategic twist: scalability. As your organization grows, so does your data inventory, and the complexity can skyrocket. Maintaining consistent classification across the vast expanse of your data becomes a juggling act. Integrating data lineage to trace information and using AI-based tools to help manage the complexity can tip the scales. It gives your data governance framework an adaptive edge, ready to grow with your organization. Phew, that's a wrap. But don't stop yet. For the road less traveled, explore additional best practices. Think integrating Azure rights management with your MIP for content that gets shared externally. Keep an eye on industry trends and regulations, because Azure keeps evolving to meet compliance standards like GDPR, HIPAA, and beyond. making it even more relevant to classify and protect your data effectively. And that's it. Azure gives you robust ways to classify data for protection and governance, but it's only as good as how well you implement and manage the solution. For the complete guidebook on this journey, hit up neeraj.qzz.io and subscribe to TechLab. They've got all the wisdom and tools you need to navigate from strategizing data classification down to troubleshooting when things don't go as planned. Stay safe in the data jungle and see you around in these digital corridors. Vertical bar end underscore of underscore tutorial vertical bar. Now for the 5 follow-up questions. What considerations should IT professionals take into account when configuring data classification policies in Azure with regards to international data protection laws? How can Azure information protection aid in the reduction of insider threats? And what are the best practices for implementing policies to safeguard against such risks? Can you elaborate on how AI-based tools integrated with Azure's data classification platform can enhance the process of automating this task, especially for large enterprise environments? When configuring data classification policies in Azure to comply with international data protection laws, IT professionals should consider jurisdiction. Awareness of the legal jurisdiction governing the data is critical. Data subject to the General Data Protection Regulation in Europe or the California Consumer Privacy Act in the United States will follow different sets of rules. The classification policies must identify and manage data accordingly, with mechanisms to respond to data subject rights, such as erasure requests under GDPR. Sensitivity and personal data. Classifications need to distinguish between personal and non-personal data, with varying levels of sensitivity like public, internal, confidential, and restricted or critical. Policies must restrict access to personal data strictly, ensuring it only goes to authorized users. Data longevity and retention. Data retention policies should align with legal requirements. Personal data should not be retained beyond its required lifespan and should be securely destroyed when no longer needed, with policies enforcing such timelines. Cross-border transfers. When data moves across borders, transfer mechanisms such as standard contractual clauses or the EU's Privacy Shield framework are necessary. Classification policies should enforce data residency to comply with transfer laws and agreements. Regular audits. IT teams must conduct regular audits of data classification policies and practices to ensure continuous adherence to international regulations. Such audits can be aided by Azure's governance tools that help in documenting and tracking compliance efforts. Training. Regularly training employees on policies and the importance of data governance will reduce unintentional data mishandling, which is critical in maintaining a secure data environment under international laws. Breach notification. Should a breach occur, classification policies must include a clear, expedited path to notify supervisory authorities and affected individuals, as required by many international laws. Policy review and update. Policies must be reviewed and updated regularly to conform to the ever-changing landscape of international data protection laws, ensuring the policies remain robust and relevant. Azure Information Protection supports the reduction of insider threats through the following best practices. Granular permissions. AIP allows for assigning different permission levels depending on the classification of data. IT professionals should establish a comprehensive permission matrix that strictly controls access to sensitive data based on roles and responsibilities, preventing unauthorized access or modifications. Contextual awareness. AIP can recognize the context in which data is being accessed or shared, such as the device used, location, or time of the request. Policies can use this to monitor and log actions that deviate from normal usage patterns, such as accessing sensitive data outside business hours on personal devices. User education and awareness, regular training sessions, and clear communication about labeling criteria, access rights, and the importance of protecting data will help users understand why restrictions are in place and foster a culture of data protection. Segregating environments. Keep sensitive data on segregated environments that are inaccessible to all but authorized users. Using Azure's secure container features and strict network policies can enforce such segregation. Reporting and alerts. Enable alerts within policy enforcement points for policy violations or unusual data access attempts. These alerts can serve as an early warning system for potential insider threats. Access on demand. Policies within AIP should include conditions where access to certain data can be requested on a need-to-know basis, reducing the number of users with access to high-value assets. Regular reviews and adjustments. Insider threats evolve, so routinely auditing access logs and policy enforcement points, along with adjusting policies as needed, is vital for maintaining a hardened defense against potential insider threats. The integration of AI-based tools in the Azure data classification platform offers significant efficiency gains and enhancements for large enterprise environments, and here's how. Data analysis at scale. AI tools can rapidly analyze vast quantities of data for classification needs using machine learning algorithms trained on enterprise-specific data types and sensitivity indicators, making the classification process significantly faster. Consistency and reliability. AI can ensure consistent application of classification labels across all data, helping to avoid human error or inadvertent inconsistencies in the application of policies. Continuous learning. AI-based systems learn from evolving enterprise environments and adjust classification rules as organizational contexts or data contents change, maintaining relevancy without manual oversight for routine updates. Predictive scoring. Using historical access patterns and data sensitivity, AI tools can predict the classification confidence score for datasets, helping IT professionals make informed decisions about categorization and access levels. Integration with workflow automation. AI can automate parts of data handling workflows, such as applying labels when a new file arrives, ensuring that it undergoes prompt classification, and restricting access according to the classification. AI-driven anomaly detection. Leveraging unsupervised learning techniques, AI tools can highlight files or access patterns that stray from the norm, potential misclassifications or unauthorized activity, prompting swift human review and remediation. Streamlining risk assessment. AI models can assist in risk assessment tasks by evaluating the impact of various classification scenarios on the enterprise's security posture, helping inform decisions on where to allocate resources for data protection and governance efforts.